On this episode of the Contagious Influencers of America podcast, celebrating 40 years of hits, we've got a very special guest today, the artist of God Bless the U.S.A., the one and only Lee Greenwood.
We toured almost 300 days a year. There was absolutely no time to write at home. 1983 was the year in the fall that I wrote it in the back of my bus touring somewhere.
I can't think of a better guest for this episode dropping on Veterans Day than my good friend Lee Greenwood. And he's all about America, from his music to his work with wounded warriors. This is David Sams, and this is CIA Contagious Influencers of America podcast. And I have one of the greatest influencers of America right now. Lee Greenwood's going to be coming up. And can you believe that it's been 40 years since God Bless the U.S.A. was first heard? That's right. We're coming up on the 40th anniversary of this phenomenal song. Now, don't get me wrong. Lee has had plenty of hits. We're talking about over 20 top 10 singles, 7 number 1 hits, and garnering multiple Grammy, CMA, and ACM awards. But let's face it, nothing has been more prominent and influential than his song, God Bless the U.S.A. It's a song that has truly crossed not only genres of music, but also decades, having multiple resurgences over the years when our nation needed it most. So I chat with Lee all about the facets of the song, going all the way back to when he wrote it, to seeing the impact it still has today. But that's not all we talk about. We also talk about his God Bless the USA Bible. That's right, he has a Bible called God Bless the USA Bible. It's a custom limited edition Bible that also includes the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, Pledge of Allegiance, and get this, handwritten chorus lyrics of the song. I'm talking about in Lee's own handwriting. You're going to get God Bless the USA chorus right there in that Bible. And it can be purchased at GodBlessTheUSABible.com. Now, by the way, these things are flying off the shelves. I mean, they've had a hard time keeping this Bible in on the shelves because everybody seems to want it. So go check it out at GodBlessTheUSABible.com. He also shares multiple great stories about certain concerts and tours he's done over the years that you'll want to hear. And not to mention, we also talk about his great work with the Helping a Hero organization and his Hope for America. So we're going to get to that interview in just a minute. But first, what if I told you there's something out there that costs less, but people are happier with it? With prices of everything right now, I know you want to hear more. Now, I'm not pulling your leg, folks. It's real, and it's called MediShare. Maybe you've heard the typical family saves something like $500 a month after switching to MediShare for their health care, and that's huge. It's also true that people are, they're way more satisfied after making the switch. MediShare gets double, that's right, double the customer satisfaction ratings compared with typical health insurance. That's right, double. MediShare works. It's been around for something like a quarter of a century, and members have shared more than $3 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars of each other's bills. People also love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So it's true, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you are self-employed or part of the gig economy, or just want a plan that you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. Here's the number you need, 833-32-BIBLE, 833-32-BIBLE, 833-32-BIBLE. Now let's get to that interview that I just recently did with the one, the only, Lee Greenwood. Hey, Lee, welcome to the homestead.
Thank you very much. Great to be back here.
Yeah, we've tried to do this a couple of times, but I got COVID, for crying out loud. Who would have known, right? I guess we all are going to get it sooner or later.
Yeah, I didn't have it forever, and then I finally tested positive, but I had absolutely no symptoms.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I couldn't wait to get you over here for a number of reasons. First of all, you got a big anniversary coming up. So I want to talk about that. You have the anniversary, the 40th anniversary of the big song, God Bless the U.S.A. coming up, what?
This year, next year, actually. I wrote it in 1983, so it'll be next year, 2023. But we're celebrating the whole year of it, of course, and we've had a monster show down in Huntsville, Alabama with 40 years of hits. That's what we call this tour. It's a 40 years of hits tour. And as I look back at my discography, and I think the 36 recorded albums and 3 or 4 compilation albums, we're looking at almost 40 albums over those years, and so much good music, and a lot of it never made radio because radio only played the hits you designated for them to play.
Well, you didn't leave much room because you had 7 number 1 hits, 32 charted singles, 2 platinum albums. So what are you complaining about? That they wouldn't play your others?
No, but there's so much good music. Oh my gosh. And now the good news is, because of downstreaming, downloading, streaming music, is a lot of the major companies who had a piece of that pie now have shoved them all up on Spotify or Alexa or whatever you can get. So you get a lot of the music, and they were playing some of my albums the other day at the house because we had some guests over, and I went, what album was that on? I couldn't remember that. And we were at Bridgestone Arena the other night and saw Michael Bublé in town in Nashville. And I remember we took a picture for an album at the top of Bridgestone Arena that's no longer used for anything. It's above the Sirius XM place. And I couldn't remember the name of that album, and only my wife could come up with that. And I'm like, oh, yes, it was.
So as you look back on all these years, first of all, at what point in your career did you write that song?
1983 was the year in the fall that I wrote it in the back of my bus touring somewhere. Yeah, and the reason I say that, and specifically, is because when I signed at MCA in 1979, we started recording in 1980, and in 1981, 82 and 83 and 84, we toured almost 300 days a year. There was absolutely no time to write at home. There was barely time to get a picture for an album. Remember, albums, the big thing that people... And the albums were good because they connected people with the artist on a visual sense. Mm-hmm. And then we would get home to record, so I'd lay a demo in my bus on a tape, not an 8-track, but a cassette tape, and I'd take it home and I'd play it for my producer, Jerry Crutchfield, who, by the way, passed last year. I will miss him desperately. And so then we would decide if it matched up with enough songs that he had chosen, because he ran MCA Music at the time, and they're all in a pile. And we played them all, and if my song held up, it did, we'd continue to have it on the album. Well, USA was just one of those that I wrote during that period.
Just one of those.
Mm-hmm. There were a lot more, and this year I'm coming out with 21 songs on that I wrote them all.
You mean 21 new songs?
There'll be some new, some old that were previously recorded.
Oh, okay.
But I've re-recorded them all, so then I own the master as well.
So over the years, I mean, the song has charted many, many times, right? I mean, it's been... it wasn't even number one on the pop charts at one point, wasn't it?
No, number 7, I think, is what it reached the country charts, and then it had another emergence during the Gulf War.
And after 9/11.
And then after 9/11, it was on all genres of music for a period of time. I think it went number 1 in most of all of those. At least it has a designation of being the only song ever played on all genres of music in the top 5.
And of course, now we hear it all the time.
Well, thankful. I mean, I'm grateful about that.
Yeah.
I think I'm more humbled by it, because to know that I've sang America the Beautiful, God Bless America, Battle Hymn of the Republic, and all those songs that we recorded in 1992 on the American Patriot album, God Bless USA stands right alongside those songs. That's kind of... that's surreal, you know. I mean, I've studied the history about Francis Scott Key and in the prison ship off the shore, and watching the battle taking place at Fort McHenry, and how meaningful that was at that moment. And that song didn't become the national anthem till the 50s, the 40s or 50s, you know. And so I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things that you think, well, it's always been around. But I was listening to the podcast the other day, and they said we did not even have pizza in America until after World War II, because the GIs brought back the pizza idea from Italy.
We had tacos, though.
Yep.
And I like tacos. See, I was born in Southern California. We had tacos long before they had them in Nashville.
And also, I see that you have a God Bless the U.S.A. Bible. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm really proud of this. It's leather bound. It has 2 crossed flags in front of it. It says on the front of
beautiful.
it, Holy Bible. It is the King James Version, but it's called the God Bless the USA Bible because for the first time ever, included in this book, and I humbly tell you that they asked if I would write the lyrics of my song, God Bless the USA, and I did. And that's in a back page. In addition to that, on the back pages are things that I think important for every American to know. Not if you're just a Christian, but anyone to know who believes in American democracy. And that is the Pledge of Allegiance, which we've included, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and the Declaration of Independence, all readable. Sometimes the original is not readable. It's so tiny in print, but you can see it in this book.
Well, that's fantastic. And it's a limited edition available online at, what is the address for that?
Well, GodBlessUSA.com.
Okay.
You can get it. Or LeeGreenwood.com has a link you can get it to. And you notice how it feels? It's leather bound.
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful.
I mean, we have our own Bible that's, it is a leather, but it's a dark, kind of a dark leather. This is that beautiful, what do you call it, tan? Bronze looking, and on the back and the front. And it also has the little tab so you can, put something that you want inside the Bible to get.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So let me ask you, where do you like to perform the most? Because I would choose a cruise ship on the Mediterranean myself.
Well, I've done that, and we've done that many years on the country music cruise.
Are those the ones that Time Life does?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Those are great.
They're fun, except when you get seasick. And I remember the last one, Brenda Lee and I both got seasick, and we had to go below deck. They're apples and oranges. Let's take these, for instance. 2 presidential elections that I sang at the inaugural event at the Lincoln Memorial. More than 1 billion people saw both of those. It's not about the numbers, it's about the environment for me. Let's say the Nimitz aircraft carrier for the Navy in the Persian Gulf. Interesting environment. The Ryman Theater in Nashville, Tennessee. Not the big house, which seats 4,000, but the small one downtown, 1,500, is the mother church of country music. And we love playing there. Smaller venues. Sometimes there's places where I will do like an intimate performance, and I'm a keyboard player, and so I love doing that. That's kind of fun. My best performance place in the country is not in Vegas. And they have some of the best theaters, plush seating, and I played those for 20 years. Oddly enough, it's the Hard Rock Casino in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And
really?
The performing venue is called The Joint. And it is done in Vegas style with beautiful booths that you sit in that are plush. Then they have seating down in front that are close enough to the stage. It's a proscenium stage facing the audience on a not quite a 180. And it's nice and deep, so you have plenty of space to move. And then above them is another seating above the Vegas style booths. And then high up is a glassed in area where the high rollers who don't want to be involved in the peons can see and hear the music through the glass, but they can talk and not be involved in what we do. In addition to that,
by the way, they have those in churches too, but they're nurseries.
That's for the crying babies. Yeah. And these guys are probably crying when they lose money, so they're up there. And then the backstage area is fabulous. They treat the artists like kings, and they always give us a really nice gift every time we played there. It's kind of like the Houston Rodeo. When I did that, we did that 4 different times, and they gave me a belt buckle every time, but like a fabulous belt buckle. So the Joint always gives that. And just, there are other places, of course. I'm not going to tell you that I haven't liked other venues to play in, but that's my favorite.
You're tell me about I know you do a lot of work for wounded soldiers.
Yes, sir. Wounded warriors.
Wounded warriors. And tell me about the one that you have. Helping a Hero. Helping Hero, yeah.
Yeah, it's a foundation based in Houston, Texas. I've been with him as an ambassador for almost, 11 years now. We built 200 homes for these wounded warriors in 10 years. And it's gratifying. I mean, it is heartwarming. First of all, we have a celebration when we break ground. We choose the soldier and we vet them to make sure that they have a goal in their head and not something of apathy. And I will say that almost to the soldier, they all are looking forward. And they may be a single, double, or even triple amputee, a burn victim, but they all have a positive attitude. And it's like, yes, I want to move forward. I want to do something for my country. I want to get back to service, and not necessarily combat service, but service to their fellow man. And so we break ground, and we have the congressmen and senators and the mayor of a city and wherever the soldier wants to live, and we multitask this force. It starts with the contractor who donate their time. All the subs donate their time. Let's say the electric company gives them electricity for 2 years. The water company, same thing. Free this, free that. Appliances, painters, and so forth. And so within 6 or 7 months, we can build them a very nice home. And $300,000 to $500,000, and it is in a great neighborhood because we don't want them having an area where people have access to them too quickly without having somebody watching over them. Mm-hmm. And believe me, the neighborhood embraces this soldier. Where we build a home, and we build it anywhere from Michigan to Carolinas to. Generally, more of the soldiers prefer to be near where they got their prosthesis, which would be Walter Reed or San Antonio, and so there's many of those in those areas. Helping a Hero now has what we call the 100 Home Challenge, and we're going to build 100 homes this year alone, with the help of Bass Pro Shops and Johnny Morris, who's dedicated to build the first 10 of 100 himself. So that's about a $5 million investment. And then the Breland the Breland family out of northern Alabama has said, we will build the other 90. And Bass Pro Shop says, okay, I'll build 25% of those. So we're going to get those done. So anybody listening to your broadcast, we need two things. If you go to helpingahero.org and make us a donation, that's helpful. It's not the cash we need so much because there's a minimum cash investment in a home that's $500,000 with all so much help. But we do need a soldier. So if you like to nominate a vet who you think deserves this home, they have to be a wounded warrior, and we will take it from there. So that's helpful to us.
So what's that URL again?
Helpingahero.org, not .com.
Okay. So did you ever think that you would be this iconic face of patriotism? I mean, at what point did that really kick in and you realize, wow, you know what? God's put me on this planet for a purpose over and above just being an entertainer. There's a whole other level to what you bring to all of us.
When I first moved to Nashville, there were two things I wanted to do. Well, three. I wanted to embrace the country music community. Otherwise, I'd have stayed in California and Nevada. I'm from that area, and it's like, it was always good to me. I had plenty of work, And the second thing is, I started singing from the University of Tennessee. And I went through 2 music conductors in 40 years. Recently, Dr. Ryder just retired, and I sang at his final game for UT. The third thing was I immediately offered my performances to the National Guard in Tennessee. And the National Guard flew me on at least 12 of my missions outside the United States. We had other National Guards units, including Minnesota, Alaska. National Guard flew us in the Asian continent. And as a matter of fact, I wrote them a song called Home to Alaska. And I've re-recorded it on my new album. We filmed a video from Prudhoe Bay to Valdez Harbor, and courtesy of BP. And Mae Axton, bless her heart, who got that together for me and gave that to the National Guard in Alaska as their song. And so, touring with the National Guard was always something that was interesting for me. I can remember one instance in particular where we're on a C-141 and we're flying past Algeria. And I'm sitting in the engineer's seat. There's two seats, cockpit. In the cockpit, there's the pilot and then the engineer. And so the engineer comes in and says, "Get out of the seat, get out of the seat." I sat down real quick, and in about 4 seconds, the plane banked to the right and went out over the water. And I said, "What was that all about?" After we leveled out, and he said, "Well, because we very seldom are in this world, on this part of the world, we don't understand the English that people talk to when we connect with towers. So they set up beacons, and we follow the beacon, and that gives us a direction where we're supposed to go. Albania had set in a false beacon. They were going to make us fly over land. Once we'd committed over the 3-mile limit, they were going to shoot us down. So we have those moments always, but whenever I'm touring with the military, I always, love that, and I love to be with them and get a handle on what they do as well as sacrificing for us.
So do you feel some sense of responsibility now that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I'm happy you point that out. And my wife and I share that. She did USO tours before I met her. And as a touring pageant winner, she was Miss Tennessee in 1989. And we met on our next USO tour that year. And we married in 92. Two things good I did in 92. I married my wife first. And the second thing is released that American Patriot CD. Because when MCA and I switched labels, they put God Bless USA into catalog. And the attack on America happened in 2001. The only thing that was available was American Patriot, and it was on the other label. And MCA went, "Darn, yeah, well, that'll teach you a lesson." It's like, but I do feel the responsibility, and I take it seriously. I'm not the only one that does. I mean, if you look at Toby Keith and, T. Graham Brown, I mean, anybody who touts America, Alan Jackson had his great song after 2001. If you're singing about American pride, you've got me in your corner.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, were any of those USO tours with Bob Hope?
His last one.
Really?
And, yes.
You were on his last? Wow.
Yeah, it was 1988. I went around the world, 25,000 miles. We did 8 shows in 8 days.
What was that like?
Fast. I mean, it was hectic. I mean, I was a straight man for Bob Hope. I have a picture some fan sent us who was in the Navy, standing below the 3 guns on the USS Missouri battleship, and Bob Hope is standing to my right, Connie Stevens on my left, and we're about to embrace Christmas that year. And as a footnote, let me just give you a little bit of a story. My wife, Kim, was a performer during those years before I met her. So we're flying around the world with these 2 C-141s. We have the Hawaii Orchestra with us and celebrities. And our last stop would have been the Azore Islands. And then put on our show there, which is off the coast of Spain, and then go on and fly to New York to do our press. Because Bob Hope always brought the pictures home, as he did in Vietnam, of where he's been and where he filmed. And by the way, he owned all the film. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You can't get any of that. It's the Hope Foundation. That's why the USO years later didn't even know that I was on those tours. Mm. So we can't land at the Azore Islands. We have to turn back the road to Spain and put on our last show there. Unannounced, we arrived. There's no billeting. We slept in the airplanes. We did our shtick. He did his comedy stuff. We all sang, danced, did all the things we were supposed to do. We get on the 2 planes the next day, and we fly over the Azore Islands, heading for New York. And on the ground, I did not know was my wife to be.
Wow.
Who was with a performing group who would open for Randy Travis in Europe. And we were going to be their ride home at Christmas. This was Christmas Eve.
Wow.
And so we got in the cockpit and talked to them on the ground, said, "We're really sorry, we can't you can't stay, we have to go, and we hope the best." Later, when my wife and I would meet and share the story of that, she said it took her 3 days to get a MAC flight to get home. She was really angry. She was not happy with me. I said, "It wasn't my fault."
So looking over, how many years you've been doing this now?
Well, my first song was Mac the Knife by Bobby Darin. I was 13 in the J&T nightclub in Sacramento, California. I remember it well. And my first band was called the Apollos. I don't know why we named us that. That's the Greek gods. We weren't Greek gods. I don't know why we named it that. It was crazy. And we eventually would get to Las Vegas and open up at the Stardust Hotel in 1960. And I was 17 then.
How did you accomplish that? How did you go from there to Vegas? Who'd you know? You must have known somebody.
It's the man upstairs.
Really?
Yeah, I know him well.
Yeah,
and
you sure do.
I'm sure God intervened. But it was really odd. We had a touring. I had a manager and a drummer who worked together to book our tour, and I was still in high school, and we worked Sacramento to Portland, Oregon, Portland to Idaho Falls to Jackpot, Nevada, Jackpot, Lake Tahoe, and back to Sacramento. We did that twice, and that tour was while I was a senior in high school, and so along the way, somehow the manager of the group met these two guys who were agents from San Francisco, and they saw the band play somewhere, I think Lake Tahoe maybe. And they're the ones that connected me with the Stardust Hotel in Vegas to get me an audition for the Senes brothers. That's Frank and Rocky Senes from Cleveland, Ohio, who ran all the entertainment at the Stardust. And they came and we did an audition for them, and they said, okay, we'll hire you, but you're going to be the relief act, and we'll sign you for a year.
The relief act.
So we were the relief act. And as a sidebar, in our group was a young African-American from Portland, Oregon. And he was dynamic. He was like George Benson, if you will, if you remember George Benson.
Oh, sure.
And he sang notes with his guitar. He was a dynamic performer. And how we ended up with him, I'm not sure. But combined with my versatile talent and me being 17, the other guys in the groups are all in their 20s. My guitar player was actually a top Sears salesman and gave up his job to tour with us. And so when we went to Vegas, keep this in mind, we were the first integrated act to ever work Las Vegas.
The very first.
Opened Stardust Hotel in 1960.
Unbelievable.
I am a 54-year member of the Union Local 369.
Awesome. That is fantastic. Wow. So if you had to do it all over again, what is the one career move? What is the one career move that you would do differently?
Not knowing what the outcome might have been, I would have left Vegas and went to LA and stayed there. Because you remember LA in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a hotbed of creative artists.
Oh yeah.
And the only thing is, I think in order to get into that circle, you had to smoke pot, and I'm not that.
Right.
I never did drugs, and I remember when we were living in Vegas, and Sammy Davis Jr. threw the best parties at Caesar's Palace. Mm-hmm. But when I went over there was so much cocaine flowing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot stay here. This is not what I do. Not what I believe in. And although they recognized my commitment and what I believed in, they still kept friends with me. But that's the only reason I probably wouldn't have done well in LA in the 60s. But I think that was the only thing I would have done differently. I had a guitar player friend that I met in Las Vegas named Dan Bradley, and we had a couple things in common. He loved music and he loved basketball. I loved both. And so we would go out to UNLV while I lived in Las Vegas. And when the three-point line came in for shooting, we would beat all the guys who were 7 foot because we would step back and shoot the three-pointer. And we did that forever. And we had multiple shows in Las Vegas for years and years and years. And then when I left and went to Tennessee, he became my public relations guy for a while because he just didn't fit in the music anymore. And we were still friends. He went back to Illinois where he lives, and we talk like every week or so.
I can't imagine that you didn't do smoke weed, because I was reading your bio. It said that when you're in high school, you were a part of a group called the Moonbeams.
Well, yeah, and that was patterned after the Glenn Miller Orchestra, where we had actually little cardboard stands sitting in front of us.
Right.
And when I was 14, that was the name of the band, the Moonbeams. My sister played piano, by the way, my sister. And if this goes out to Boise, Idaho, hi, Patricia, I love you very much. She was the piano player in the band. And we would sit down and play, and I played saxophone. So we had had two saxophones and a trumpet and a trombone and a rhythm section. And we would play for $5 a night at high school dances.
That's quite a band.
Yeah. Each one of us made $5.
Wow.
And we would play a full dance.
Look at that. So you were
and yeah,
a family act.
Yeah, kind of.
Just sort of a
yeah.
And where was it that you went to high school?
Norte del Rio High School in Sacramento.
Sacramento, okay.
And there was 1 year that when my mother remarried to my stepfather, Louis D'Antonoli, we moved to Anaheim, California, and I went to Anaheim High School as a freshman, and my stepfather built 2 motels right there surrounding Disneyland. And that was one of my jobs after school every day to get involved in the construction. And I did. And, cut through the avocado roots with an axe. And then I learned about electrical work, plumbing, roofing, carpentry, and everything. So I only had a year there. And that was the year that I went from alto saxophone to tenor saxophone. And I went, oh my gosh, do I love this instrument.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's talk as we finish this up. Let's talk about your hope for America, and because things have been freaking nuts the last few years. I mean, oh my gosh, I'm not even. We don't need to review the list of craziness. But what are your hopes for the country over the next few years as we look ahead?
Well, everybody on the left and the right would say the same thing. We want unity. Unfortunately, in Congress, that's not the way it goes. There is a bartering process that takes place in Congress. I'll give you this, you give me that, and we get a bill passed. The deadlock has become generally around the presidential election, where everybody kind of chooses a side, and that's the way it stalemates. I still believe, people say it's never been more divided than. Do you not remember the Civil War? Do you not remember Vietnam? Oh, we've been divided. And we will come out of this undivided, and will be once again a nation of one people. But it's going to take a Kennedy. It's going to take a Reagan. It's going to be somebody who unites the nation. Mm-hmm. And after the president has that speech to go and unites the nation, then we'll be back on track. Mm-hmm. It will never convince somebody who's a yellow dog Democrat or somebody who's a bleeding, red flag guy, Texas against California or whatever. But we can all come together under the right thing. And I think there's been so many things done wrong over the past year or so, or 3 years in the current administration. And my boys and I talk, our 27 and our 24-year-old Dalton and Parker, we talk a lot about ecology versus economy. And everybody says we should be drilling for oil. I was just in Williston, North Dakota, where we just found the largest oil supply under the ground in the planet, more than Russia, Saudi Arabia put together. And so we have more oil. And yes, if we drill for oil now, we could make those nations poor and us rich in the next 15 to 25 years. And then we deplete the oil. Then what? And the electric cars thing, that's great. And wind machines, that's great. But again, how we address that has been so politically and politicized that we can't seem to get a consensus of unilateral attack on this ecology and the global warming issue. And I think once we get someone who's in the White House that knows how to bring everybody together on those issues, we will continue to be apart. Mm-hmm. But I do have hope. As you asked me, that's the question. I have great hope. America is the greatest country on the planet. We need to make sure we stay with faith, get back to faith, because if God's going to give us a way out of this, we all have to pull together as Americans and pull through faith.
Well, I always say, the one, we've lost the art of compromise in the country. I mean, it's either, I feel like I'm in the middle of an Ohio State-Michigan football game every week or every day that I'm watching the news. I hate you. I'm never going to, of course, during the letter, during the November, I don't say the M word. It's and by the way, we take it very seriously, but it just seems like I remember the days that Reagan and Tip O'Neill would have a drink at 5 o'clock and compare notes.
My wife and I talk about that, and Kim has a great perspective on that as well. We can argue in public, and then in private, we are friends. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. But again, I think, if you don't have the same tradition when the leader of the free world is inaugurated as the president, and he doesn't put his hand on the Bible as tradition dictates for our country, then we're losing our way. Mm-hmm, and that's what it's going to take. It's going to take someone who believes in faith. And I tell my sons, I know that you consider me your hero, But there has to be somebody in your life that's bigger than me, and it has to be God. If you will believe in God, you won't necessarily lose faith when I die. So keep your eyes focused on that, and they believe that, and I love them for that. And so I try to be the leader of our family, but moreover, I try to lead them towards what faith does for them, and not what I do for them.
Well, Lee, thanks for stopping by the homestead.
Yeah.
It's always wonderful. And
You didn't have any coffee. I was looking for coffee at the homestead, and what is this? Water.
Hey, it's
I get water.
It's the afternoon.
I get that in jail. And I haven't been in jail, by the way.
Oh, well, thanks for bringing by the Bible. That's great.
Thank you.
And where can we find that again?
Yes, usabible.com, or go to leegreenwood.com, where we have a link where you can order the Bible.
Well, thank you, my friend, and keep the faith, my friend.
Thank you.
Lee Greenwood, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time to sit down with me here at the homestead. Again, with this being Veterans Day, take a look at Helping a Hero, the nonprofit organization. They're providing so many specially adapted homes for veterans, plus so much more. More information can be found at helpingahero.org. And of course, if you'd like to listen to more CIA episodes, just go to contagiousinfluencers.com. And our radio show website is at KeepTheFaith.com, where you can listen to the most recent episodes of Keep the Faith. And if we're not airing on one of your local Christian or country radio stations, call them right now and say, listen, I know of this great show called Keep the Faith, and please choose to air it on your station. We're on some 300 stations in the U.S., Canada, and UK. But, you know, folks, there's always that one station or that one market out there where we're not in. And people go, why aren't you in this market? Why aren't you in my city? Well, it's because you haven't called the station yet and encouraged them to air us. So please do call your local country or your local Christian radio station and say, please air Keep the Faith. This is David Sams, and you've been listening to CIA, Contagious Influencers of America, from the producers of Keep the Faith. Hey, I got to encourage you to go out there and live your life this week and live in color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living it in black and white. We'll see you next time.